What if every financial rescue was really a trap? Imagine a smoky back room, world leaders hunched over a table, signatures scrawled on secret documents. Outside, crowds gather at shuttered banks, their savings frozen, their futures uncertain. The headlines call it a crisis. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, calls it a solution. But what if the collapse of dozens of countries wasn't random, but followed a single, deliberate playbook, one written by the IMF itself? For decades, the same pattern has played out over and over. A country finds itself in deep trouble, a lifeline is thrown, and then what follows is a downward spiral of debt, harsh budget cuts, and social unrest. From Latin America's lost decades to Asia's currency crashes, from the pension riots in Greece to Argentina's vanishing middle class, the script never seems to change. Each time the world is told, this is different, this is a rescue. But the pattern is always the same. Is there a hidden algorithm behind every debt crisis? Are we just watching history repeat itself? Or is the next collapse already being written into the script? Coming up, we're going to expose the collapse pattern no one wants to admit exists. We'll look at the secret deals, the repeated mistakes, and the chilling similarities between past crises and the ones brewing today. What's really inside the IMF's playbook, and who's next on their list? Stay with us. It always starts the same way, a country teetering on the brink. Picture a panicked trading floor, currency values flashing red across the screens. Imagine politicians pacing in smoky cabinet rooms, the phone lines buzzing with urgent calls to Washington and Brussels. Then the banks close their doors. The ATMs run dry. The world watches as another nation inches closer to total collapse. And then they arrive. The IMF, briefcase in hand, promising salvation. A rescue package is announced, billions of dollars in loans. But there's a catch, and it's a big one. These loans come with strings attached. The official word is conditionality. In exchange for help, the country must agree to a strict set of rules. They must cut government spending, often on vital public services like healthcare and education. They have to raise taxes, which hits ordinary citizens the hardest. They're pushed to privatize state-owned assets, selling off everything from water companies to national airlines. And they must open their markets to foreign competition. In short, austerity becomes the new law of the land. The theory is that this tough medicine will stabilize the economy and ensure the loans are paid back. But what happens in reality? Let's look at the evidence. Latin America in the 1980s, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, one by one they signed the deal. Bailout money flowed in, but so did the conditions. Government budgets were slashed, wages were frozen, and massive protests erupted in the streets. Instead of recovery, GDP dropped, unemployment soared, and what followed became known as the lost decade for an entire continent. Fast forward to Asia in 1997. Thailand's currency, the baht, suddenly collapses. South Korea's giant corporations, the chaebols, start to crumble. Indonesia is rocked by riots that fill the news. Once again, the IMF steps in, demanding harsh reforms. Banks are shuttered, local companies are sold off to foreign buyers, and millions of people lose their jobs overnight. Then there's Greece in the 2010s. The world watched as severe austerity measures gutted pensions, closed hospitals, and sparked years of protests and social unrest. At every press conference, the IMF promised stability was just around the corner. But for the people on the ground, the pain was immediate and very real. So, how does a rescue package, meant to save a country, so often become a recipe for collapse? Why do the same mistakes seem to happen again and again in country after country? What happens after the IMF packs its bags and leaves? And why do so many nations end up in a worse position than when they started? The answer is more complex than just bad policy. It involves a fundamental question about power, control, and who really benefits from these global bailouts. The IMF's one-size-fits-all approach often ignores the unique social and political fabric of each nation. The push for rapid privatization can lead to cronyism and corruption, where a country's most valuable assets are sold off cheap to well-connected insiders and foreign corporations. The severe budget cuts can cripple a nation's ability to invest in its own future, in education, infrastructure, and technology, trapping it in a cycle of low growth and high debt. The social cost is immense. A generation can lose its opportunities, the middle class can be wiped out, and political instability can fester for years. The critics argue that the IMF's playbook isn't designed to create sustainable, long-term growth for the bailed-out country. Instead, they say, its primary goal is to protect the international financial system and the interests of the major global lenders. The country in crisis becomes a secondary concern. So, is the IMF a financial firefighter or an arsonist in disguise? The debate rages on, but the pattern of history is hard to ignore. As we look at the world today, with new economic storm clouds gathering on the horizon, the most important question remains: have we learned anything at all? Or is the next chapter of the playbook already being written? When the cameras leave and the headlines fade, for millions of people, the crisis is just beginning. Picture this: Buenos Aires, 2001. The banks are barricaded. Desperate crowds are banging on the locked doors. In shadowy markets, mothers are trading family jewelry just for bread. The international rescue has come and gone, but the pain, the real human cost, lingers. Argentina's riots filled the streets with smoke and fear. People's life savings vanished overnight as the peso collapsed. Middle-class families, who once had everything, slipped into poverty. An entire generation lost faith in the system. This is the lost decade, a phrase whispered in every country touched by the IMF, from Mexico to Indonesia. Let's rewind to Jakarta, 1998. Supermarket shelves are stripped bare. Students clash with police in the streets. The president is forced to resign. The IMF's structural adjustments, the policies meant to stabilize the economy, brought mass unemployment, hunger, and rage. Now fast forward to Greece, 2012. Pensioners weep outside shuttered banks, their life savings gone. Hospitals are running out of basic medicine. A proud nation, the cradle of democracy, is forced to sell off its assets, even its islands, to foreign investors. The bailout becomes just another word for humiliation. This is the true cost of the international financial playbook: currency devaluation, soaring unemployment, and a decade or more lost to a grueling recovery. On paper, the numbers might eventually look better. But on the ground, it's the people who always pay the highest price. So, what does a lost decade really look like? Why do citizens always seem to bear the heaviest burden? And is there any way to break this cycle, or is the playbook already set in stone? History's warning signs are everywhere, yet every nation seems to believe it won't happen here. But from Latin America to Asia, from Eastern Europe to Africa, the IMF playbook has run its course again and again and again. Look at the pattern. Mexico, 1982. A currency collapse, followed by an IMF loan, then harsh austerity measures, and finally, a lost decade of economic stagnation. Indonesia, 1998. Riots, IMF-mandated reforms, and mass unemployment. Greece, 2010. Bailouts, deep pension cuts, and years of social unrest. Each country has a different language, a different flag, a different culture. But the story follows the same devastating cycle: crisis, rescue, pain, repeat. Sure, there are differences. Some nations privatized their state assets faster. Some cut public spending deeper. Some even tried to resist the reforms. But the fundamental pattern always returned. Crippling debt, a period of denial, then IMF intervention, and a public left to pick up the pieces of their shattered economy. It makes you wonder, is your country immune to this pattern? Or is it just waiting for its turn? What did past leaders wish they had seen sooner? The big question now is, who's next? And more importantly, can anyone escape the playbook? But here's the crucial point. The IMF playbook is a warning, not a prophecy. History's cycle repeats, but the outcome is never completely set in stone. Every nation that fell into this trap believed it could manage the crisis on its own, right up until the moment it couldn't. Today, the global economy stands on a knife's edge. We face new, interconnected risks: global contagion from a single market crash, the rise of digital currencies, and widespread political unrest. But the lesson is ancient. No country, no matter how strong or proud, can afford to ignore the warning signs forever. Will your country be the one to finally break the cycle? Or will it become just another case study in a history textbook? The answers are hidden in the past, if you only know where to look. Subscribe for more hidden financial history and learn how to spot the next crisis before it hits. Next time, we'll explore the story of the country that almost broke the IMF cycle. Thanks for watching.